Why do some men seem to pull women into love effortlessly, while other men do everything right and get nothing? You've seen it. You've lived it. That friend who doesn't try, doesn't plan, doesn't write the perfect texts, and somehow has women falling for him like he's collecting them. Meanwhile, you're remembering birthdays, sending thoughtful messages, showing up every time she calls, and watching her treat you like a backup plan at best and invisible at worst. It's maddening. It's humiliating. And for years, you've been telling yourself the same lie to survive it. She just doesn't see what I have to offer. She sees it. That's the problem. She sees exactly what you're offering. And her nervous system has already made a judgment about it that no amount of effort will reverse. Because women don't fall in love for the reasons you were taught. They don't fall in love because you're nice. They don't fall in love because you're loyal. They don't fall in love because you love them hard enough or long enough or consistently enough to finally earn it. There are only 2 reasons a woman falls in love with a man. 2, not 10, not a checklist. 2 specific psychological triggers that have been operating beneath human attraction since before civilization existed. And 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli identified both of them while studying something that had nothing to do with romance. He was trying to understand why people surrender their loyalty to certain leaders and withhold it from others. Why populations bond to one ruler and discard another. Why human beings give their devotion to specific individuals while remaining cold to everyone else. His answer decoded something far bigger than politics. It decoded the machinery of human attachment itself. And today I'm translating those 2 reasons into the language of female psychology with a clarity that will either liberate you or hurt you, depending on whether you're willing to hear the truth. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why she fell for him and not you. And more importantly, you'll know exactly what has to change before the next woman falls for you instead. Part 1. The 2 reasons stated plainly. Let me cut through the suspense. Because Machiavelli never wasted time on dramatic reveals. He delivered the truth first, and then spent the rest of the chapter proving it. The 2 reasons a woman falls in love with a man are these. First, because being around him expands her sense of who she is. Second, because his internal stability makes her feel like the world is finally safe enough to exhale into. That's it. Those are the 2. Everything else, the physical attraction, the shared interests, the chemistry, the compatibility, is decoration. Important decoration, but decoration built on top of a foundation. And the foundation is always these 2 things. Expansion and safety, not in that order, not sequentially, simultaneously, both at once. The man who triggers both experiences in her is the man she falls for. Sometimes violently, sometimes against her better judgment, sometimes in direct contradiction to everything she told herself and her friends she wanted. The man who triggers only one is the man she likes but can't commit to. The man who triggers neither is the man she friend zones, forgets, or tolerates until something better comes along. Machiavelli arrived at this framework through his analysis of why certain leaders generated fanatical loyalty, while others, despite competence and fairness, generated only cold compliance. His conclusion, scattered across the prints, the discourses, and his personal correspondence, was that human beings bond most deeply to figures who simultaneously elevate them and protect them. The leader who only elevated his people without protecting them created excitement without loyalty. The leader who only protected his people without elevating them created dependence without love. The leader who did both, who made his people feel bigger than they were, while also making them feel safer than they'd ever been, created devotion so absolute that it survived famine, war, and generational change. This exact dynamic governs romantic love, and the man who understands it owns a key that unlocks attraction at a level most men don't even know exists. Let me take you inside each reason. Part 2. Reason 1. The expansion effect. Here's a truth about human beings that nobody wants to admit out loud. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with who we become in their presence. Read that twice, because it rewires everything you thought you knew about attraction. When a woman falls in love with you, she's not primarily responding to your qualities. She's responding to the version of herself that emerges when she's around you. If your presence brings out a version of her that she loves, that she's proud of, that she's been trying to access her whole life but couldn't quite reach on her own, she will bond to you with a force that borders on addiction because you're not just a man to her anymore. You're the environmental condition that allows her best self to exist. Machiavelli observed this pattern in political bonding with remarkable precision. He noted that citizens became devoted not to the rulers who flattered them, but to the rulers who made them feel like they were part of something greater. The soldiers who served Caesar weren't loyal because Caesar was charismatic. They were loyal because under Caesar, they became Romans in a way they'd never been Romans before. Caesar's presence expanded their identity, gave them access to a version of themselves, brave, disciplined, significant, that they couldn't have constructed alone, and they would die for that expansion because losing it meant losing the best parts of themselves. Every woman is carrying an aspirational self inside her, a version of her that's more expressive, more adventurous, more free, more sensual, more bold, more alive than the version she shows the world. This aspirational self is real. It's not a fantasy. It exists, but it lives behind walls she's built over years of navigating a world that doesn't always welcome women who are fully themselves. Most men interact only with the walled version, the curated version, the safe, socially acceptable version that she presents to everyone she doesn't fully trust. And those men never trigger the expansion effect because they never get anywhere near the real self that's hiding behind the walls. The man who triggers expansion is different, not because he's smarter or more insightful in some magical way, because his own presence is expansive. He's living in a way that invites her to live bigger too. He's authentic in a way that makes her authenticity feel permitted. He's unafraid in a way that makes her fears feel optional rather than mandatory around him. She doesn't feel like she has to shrink to fit. She feels like she can finally stretch. Practically, this looks like a few very specific things. He doesn't punish her for intensity. When she gets excited about something, he doesn't mock it. When she shares an unpopular opinion, he doesn't dismiss it. When she shows a side of herself that other men have found too much, he meets it with matched energy rather than uncomfortable silence. His presence is a signal. You can be all of yourself here. I can handle it. He doesn't flatten her with agreement. He pushes back. He challenges her thinking. He disagrees when he disagrees, not to dominate her, to engage with her fully as an equal. That engagement, the experience of being taken seriously enough to be challenged, is something most women rarely experience with men who are attracted to them. Most men, in their eagerness to please, become mirrors, and mirrors don't expand, they reflect. And a reflection of yourself, no matter how flattering, eventually becomes boring. He introduces her to things, ideas, experiences, perspectives, places, books, music, thoughts, not in a patronizing, let me educate you way, but in the natural overflow of a man whose own life is rich enough that sharing it inevitably exposes her to things she hadn't encountered before. Every new thing he brings into her world becomes a new piece of her world. And over time, her world becomes more expansive because of him. He sees the version of her that she's trying to become, not the version she currently is. This is the most powerful element because when someone sees you as the person you're trying to become, you start becoming that person more quickly, not to please them because their belief in that version of you makes that version more accessible. She starts acting more like the woman she wants to be because he already treats her like she is that woman. And slowly, inevitably, she becomes addicted not to him, to the version of herself that exists in his presence. And since she can only access that version when he's around, leaving him means losing her best self, That's not a decision she can make lightly. That's the kind of loss the human psyche resists at a level far deeper than conscious choice. Machiavelli would call this the highest form of loyalty. The loyalty that doesn't come from obligation or fear, but from the fundamental recognition that the leader provides access to something essential that nothing else can provide. The citizen isn't just loyal to Rome. He is Roman, and Rome is the only place he can fully be himself. Take that away, and he's not just losing a country, he's losing his identity. Be that to her, not by performing, by genuinely living a life so expansive, so unafraid, so unapologetically full that her proximity to you naturally expands her. You don't have to coach her into growing. Your presence alone becomes the condition for her growth. And that more than any romantic gesture is what triggers the first and deepest foundation of love. Part 3. Reason 2. The stability effect. Now the second reason, and this is the one that seems to contradict the first until you understand how they work together. Women fall in love with men whose internal stability makes the world feel safe enough to exhale into. Not comfortable, not easy, safe enough to exhale. There's a massive difference, and that difference is where most men fail. A comfortable man provides ease. He removes obstacles. He smooths friction. He makes her daily life easier through effort and accommodation, and women appreciate this. But appreciation is not love. A woman who appreciates you will thank you. A woman who loves you will ache for you. And comfort generates appreciation. Never ache. A stable man provides something else entirely. He provides a fixed point in a world that won't stop moving. He's the anchor while everything else drifts. He's the lighthouse while everything else flickers. His presence tells her nervous system something her conscious mind has been desperate to hear her entire life. You don't have to carry it all. You can rest. Machiavelli identified this quality in the greatest leaders he studied. He called it constancy, not stubbornness, not rigidity. The ability to remain unchanged by external circumstances. The leader whose mood didn't shift with every piece of news, whose strategy didn't change with every dissenting opinion, whose fundamental self remained recognizable, whether the kingdom was at peace or at war, whether his allies were celebrating or abandoning him, whether fortune was smiling or crushing him. That constancy was what allowed his people to rest. Because when your leader is unstable, you can't rest. You're always bracing for the next shift, always managing his moods, always compensating for his volatility. But when your leader is constant, you can finally put down the burden of vigilance. You can trust that tomorrow's version of him will resemble today's. You can predict, relax, and operate from ease rather than fear. This is what stability does for a woman in love. Think about the exhausting internal world most women navigate every day. She's managing her emotions because the world penalizes her for displaying them too openly. She's managing her appearance because her value is still judged visually, despite every protest against it. She's managing her tone, her energy, her assertiveness, calibrating constantly to avoid being called too much or too little or too anything. She's managing relationships, remembering details, maintaining connections, doing the invisible emotional labor that holds social circles together. She's managing every moment of every day without rest. Then she meets a man whose internal stability is so solid, so immovable, that just being near him triggers a physiological relaxation response. Her shoulders drop, her jaw unclenches. The background hum of vigilance quiets for the first time in years, and her nervous system, exhausted from a lifetime of carrying everything, tastes something it's been starving for. Rest, not the rest of sleep. The rest of knowing that someone else is holding the weight. Not forever, not in every domain, but in this relationship with this man, in this moment, she can finally put down part of what she's been carrying because he's strong enough to take it without buckling. That rest is addictive in a way that nothing else can replicate because it's so rare. Most men don't provide it. Most men, in fact, add to her burden rather than lighten it. They need emotional management. They need reassurance. They need their moods tended to and their insecurities soothed. Every interaction with them is a withdrawal from her already depleted reserves. The stable man is different. Being around him is a deposit, not a withdrawal. She leaves every interaction with more energy than she arrived with, not less. And that simple difference, energy gained versus energy lost, is the single most reliable predictor of whether a woman will fall in love with a man or slowly retreat from him. Practically, stability looks like this. His mood is not contingent on her mood. She can be frustrated, sad, anxious, and his steady presence doesn't waver. He doesn't match her distress. He doesn't absorb it. He doesn't try to fix it. He simply remains present and calm, offering the implicit message that nothing she's feeling is bigger than what he can hold. His responses to crisis are measured. When something goes wrong, and things always go wrong, he doesn't spiral. He doesn't explode. He doesn't collapse. He assesses. He thinks. He acts. The crisis passes through him like water through a stone. The stone remains. His identity is not negotiable. His core values, his mission, his sense of self, these don't bend based on who's in the room or what the current pressure demands. She can predict who he'll be tomorrow because she knows who he is today. And that predictability in a world where most things are unpredictable is one of the most comforting experiences available to a human nervous system. His word means something. When he says he'll do something, he does it. When he says he'll be somewhere, he's there. When he commits to anything, he follows through. And this consistency built brick by brick over time creates a foundation of trust so solid that she stops even questioning whether it will hold. It just holds. That's what he does. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who is faithful to his word, who is solid in his commitments, who maintains the same face in public and private, creates a state that endures. The prince who shifts based on circumstances, who says different things to different audiences, who calibrates his behavior for every new situation, creates a state that collapses the moment he's not personally present to manage it. Your relationship is a state, and states built on instability collapse. States built on stability endure. Not because the stable prince is more charming, because his people can rest inside his stability. And rest is what allows them to invest fully in the relationship rather than constantly hedging against its collapse. Part 4. Why both are required. Here's where it gets interesting. Because expansion without stability is not enough, and stability without expansion is not enough. The two reasons work as a matched pair, and the absence of either one is why so many men who seem to have one of them still fail to generate love. The man who provides only expansion is exciting but unreliable. He takes her to new places, introduces her to new ideas, makes her feel alive in ways she'd never felt before. But his own life is chaotic. His moods are unpredictable. His commitments shift. His presence is intoxicating but unsustainable. She has amazing nights with him, profound conversations, experiences she'll remember forever. And she can't trust him with her heart because his stability is non-existent. She'll call him a great adventure. She'll say he changed her life. She won't marry him because some part of her knows that building a life on expansion alone is like building a house on a wave. Thrilling, beautiful, brief. The man who provides only stability is safe, but suffocating. His life is orderly. His commitments are reliable. His moods are predictable. He's the man her mother loves. He's the man her friends say she's lucky to have. And her body, despite every logical reason to love him, refuses to cooperate. The spark isn't there. The butterflies don't come. Sex feels beautiful rather than electric, because stability without expansion is stagnation. The world stops moving, and the woman who's with him realizes that in exchange for safety, she's had to shrink. She can't be her biggest self around him because his stability doesn't leave room for her intensity. His predictability doesn't welcome her unpredictability. His containment starts to feel like containment of her. She'll call him a good man. She'll say she should love him. She'll eventually leave anyway, because a life without expansion is a life half-lived, and no amount of comfort can compensate for that loss. Machiavelli understood this balance perfectly, though he described it in political terms. He wrote that the greatest princes were both lions and foxes. Lion for strength, fox for cleverness. Neither quality alone was enough. A prince who was only a lion was defeated by cleverer opponents. A prince who was only a fox was defeated by stronger ones. The prince who combined both qualities was invincible. The man who combines expansion and stability is the romantic equivalent of Machiavelli's ideal prince. He gives her growth and safety, adventure and anchor, fire and foundation. The combination is so rare that when a woman encounters it, her response isn't casual interest, it's obsession. It's the feeling of having found something she didn't even know existed, but now cannot imagine living without. That's love. Not the fluffy romantic comedy version, the deep, biological, unshakable version, the version that survives years, the version that doesn't need external validation or constant reassurance, the version that simply exists quietly and permanently as a fact of her life. Part 5. How to become the man who triggers both. You can't fake either of these. That needs to be the first thing we address, because most men upon hearing this will start scheming about how to appear expansive or project stability without actually becoming expansive or stable. Machiavelli would laugh at them because he knew better than anyone that appearances that aren't backed by reality collapse the moment they're tested. And women test everything. The only path forward is becoming the real thing. Both qualities simultaneously through work that most men aren't willing to do. Expansion comes from living, actually living, pursuing things that excite you without needing anyone's permission, reading widely, thinking deeply, questioning what you've been told, traveling even locally, even to places in your own city you've never explored, learning skills, taking risks that scare you, having conversations that stretch your perspective, building a life so rich with curiosity and engagement that you naturally become someone whose presence exposes others to more of the world. This isn't about being impressive, it's about being alive. The man who is fully alive, who is engaged with existence at full capacity, becomes expansive as a side effect. He doesn't have to try to expand her horizons. His own horizons are wide enough that being near him naturally stretches hers. Stability comes from discipline, not the boring kind, the foundational kind. The daily practices that build an internal architecture strong enough to withstand external storms. Physical discipline so your body doesn't betray you in the moments that matter. Emotional discipline so you can feel without being controlled by what you feel. Mental discipline so you can think clearly under pressure. Spiritual discipline so you have something to anchor to when circumstances try to tear you loose. Stability isn't something you're born with. It's something you build through thousands of small choices, through following through on commitments you made to yourself, through doing hard things when easy things were available, through saying no when saying yes would have been more comfortable, through holding your position when holding it cost you something. Every one of these choices adds a brick to the internal structure that becomes your stability. And when the structure is strong enough, when it's been built high enough and deep enough, it radiates. You don't have to announce it. People feel it. Women feel it with particular sensitivity, because women more than men are wired to detect stability. Their entire attraction system is calibrated around finding it, build the structure, live the expansive life, both things simultaneously, not as a strategy, as a way of being. And here's the part Machiavelli would emphasize. This work is its own reward. Even if no woman ever noticed, even if you stayed single forever, the man who builds himself into someone expansive and stable is a man who has won at life itself. Romance is a byproduct, a consequence, a natural result of becoming the kind of man whose presence is worth being around. Don't build yourself for her. Build yourself for you, and let her, whoever she turns out to be the lucky one who gets to stand next to the man you've become. Machiavelli died believing his work would disappear. He'd lost everything that mattered to him in life, and he couldn't see the 5 centuries of influence his writing would have on every serious student of power, strategy, and human nature who came after him. He died thinking he'd failed. He didn't fail. He told the truth. And truth, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how unpopular, no matter how long it takes, eventually finds the people who need it. You needed this truth. You might not have wanted it. It might contradict everything you were taught about love, about attraction, about how to earn a woman's devotion, but you needed it, because without it, you'll spend the rest of your life confused about why effort doesn't equal outcome, why loyalty doesn't earn love, why being a good man isn't enough. Now you know the 2 reasons, expansion and stability, both required, neither optional, both built through real work on yourself rather than clever strategy on her. Build them, not for the relationship you want, for the man you want to be. Because the man who lives expansively and stably wins at love almost as an afterthought. His primary victory is the life he's living. The woman who loves him is the echo of that larger victory. Be that man. The 2 reasons take care of themselves. If this landed somewhere real, subscribe. If you know a man who's been playing the wrong game with the right intentions, share this with him. It might save him a decade of confusion. Machiavelli handed us the blueprint. All we have to do is build.